Hi everyone, welcome to the Java session. In this session, we are going to see how to insert data into the table using JDBC code. Now let me show you the code. This was the code you need to write in order to insert the data into the database using JDBC. Now let me explain each and every step. The first step is we need to import the necessary packages, the JDBC package, which means the SQL package. Import java.sql.star. Right now, in order to interact with a specific database, we need to have the driver class, which makes interaction between our code and the specific database. Now observe Oracle having the Oracle driver. For that, we need to load or register with that driver so that we can interact with that database. Observe here, in order to load the driver, we need to write class.forName. This was the driver class, Oracle driver. Now observe here, Oracle is the package, JDBC and driver are the sub packages. Inside these sub packages, we can find a class which is a driver class called as Oracle driver. We need to load it in order to interact with the Oracle database. Now, in order to connect to the database, we are having a username and password, right? We need to pass it as a string so that the connection will be established. Observe here, connection is the interface. Connection con equal to driver manager is the class present in the SQL package. Driver manager dot get connection. For this get connection method, we need to pass a parameter. First one is JDBC colon Oracle colon thin. The driver thin is the driver currently we are using, and the IP address and the port is fixed 1521 for this, and XE which represents the service name of the database. And now observe, these are the username and passwords of the Oracle account. This is the username and this was the password. Now by executing this line, a connection will be established with this username and this password. Now in order to process our queries, we need to create the reference for statement interface. Statement stmt equal to con.create statement. The create statement method will create the reference for the statement interface, which is used to process the normal queries. Okay, now observe here. Now let me show you where actually the driver is located. Driver is located in the installation directory of the Oracle. Observe here, Oracle exe app Oracle product server JDBC lib. Inside you can find OJDBC 14. When you extract this jar file, you can get the packages, and inside these packages you can find the Oracle driver class. So in order to interact with the Oracle database, we need to load that Oracle driver class. As I shown you here, this is the driver class. Now let me explain you the code how to insert the data. Observe here. Now I had created scanner sc equal to new scanner so that I can read the input dynamically from the keyboard, from the console. Now first I am asking the user to enter the number of rows to insert, and I am storing that value in n equal to sc dot nextInt, which means how many rows you want to insert, that value will be stored in n, right? Now observe carefully. Now observe the logic. Now I am writing a loop so that starting from first row to n rows, which is nothing but how many rows I entered, that all rows will be entered or held by the database. Observe here, for int I equal to 1, I less than or equal to n, I plus plus. First I am asking the user, enter the ID and name of row. I will be 1 for the first iteration. Now I am holding that ID in SID and the entered name in SName. Now I am going to execute the query stmt.execute update. Here you need to use a method called execute update, because whenever I am using insert, delete or create, I need to use execute update. But whenever I am using select query, I need to use execute query, because execute query method will return the result set reference, whereas execute update method will return the integer status. If the status is 1, which represents the query was performed successfully. Now observe, insert into employee values. The first one is ID, right? If it is of any integer type, you need to write like this: double quote plus SID plus double quote. Whereas if it is a string, you need to write like this: single quote double quote plus S name plus double quote single quote. Right? SID is a variable holding entered ID. S name is a variable holding entered name. Now, whenever I execute that query, based on the status, I will get the message that row 1 inserted successfully, row 2 inserted successfully. Like that, I will get the messages. Now observe, finally I am going to close my connection. If meanwhile, if there is any error occurred, I am going to catch it using catch block. I hope the code is clear for everyone. Let me show you the execution. First, let me show you the database. This was the database. I connected to the database using my username and password. Now observe, there is only one table called students. Now let me create one more table. Create table. Table name is employee, and the first one is the ID, which is of type integer, and the second column is the name, which is of type varchar2 of 20 length. Okay, now observe carefully. I created a table employee. ID is the first column and name is the second column. Now table created successfully. Now let me show you. Select star from employee. Now observe carefully. There is no rows in the data, right? Now let me show you. Let me commit this here, and let me show you the code again. This was the code, right? In this code, I am going to insert the details. Insert into employee values, right? Now let me run this code using Java. We need to set the class path for the jar file. Set class path equal to percentage class path percentage semicolon dot semicolon, which means is there any previous class paths, set them as it is, and for that class path attach this class path also. This is the class path. Let me paste it here, and oj, and let me type tab. Here you get ojdbc.jar, right? Let me clear that class path has been set. Now let me compile the code. Java C JDBC example, right? JDBC example1.java. It compiles fine. Let me run this code. Java JDBC example1. Let me running this code. Yes, enter number of rows. I want to insert 3 rows. The ID and name for the first row. ID is 101 and the name is some RAM. And row 1 inserted successfully, right? Let me check. Enter ID and name for the second row. Second row ID is 102 and name is Sam. Right? Row 2 inserted successfully. And third one is 103 and the name is some Tom. Right? Row 3 inserted successfully and my program got terminated. Now let me check whether the data is inserted or not from the database command. Here, this is my Oracle command line interface. Select star from what is the table employee. Now observe, the data was inserted. I am not inserting the data using SQL query. I am inserting the data using JDBC code, right? Observe, this code made me to insert 3 rows into the table employee, right? Observe, here I had given 3 values, ID and name for 3 rows, and that got the data will be inserted into the Oracle database. This is all about today's session. In the next session, I will come up with many more videos on JDBC. Thank you.